And we are recording. Hello, Kathryne. How are you?
Mhm. I am doing extremely well this morning. Well, now afternoon. How are you,
Yeah,
Michael?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I think it's going to be an amazing show. It's going to be a powerful show. It's going to
Mm.
be transformative. That's the word I'm looking for.
Hmm. Yes.
I think it's going to be a really important topic to talk about today, especially because of all the loss that everybody's going
Hmm.
through, whether it's
Hmm.
jobs,
Hmm.
careers, relationships, family members.
Yes.
And when I found out that you worked with people with grief and as
Hmm.
like a grief counselor, I thought, okay,
Hmm.
this is the perfect opportunity to talk about this, because so many
Yes.
people have gone through it. I know I just recently gone through it. Well, it wasn't recently now, but it's 2019.
Hmm. Right.
And yeah, it's amazing how difficult it can be and how people can get stuck in it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And, and that's sort of where my journey had also started. And I'll get into a little bit more details on that, how it all started for me. But as I was having more and more conversations with people when I was sharing my story and hearing where they were at, and Michael, we're talking like people 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, even 30 years that, after what they had experienced, and most of it had been, either they lost their husband, they lost their wife, they lost a child, whatever the case might be, life stopped for them from that point on. And
Yeah.
it was, I can't move forward, I can't love again, I can't have another child, I can't. It was a lot of I can't, I don't see. Right. And for me, as I was hearing these conversations, I'm thinking, oh my God, is that what it's going to look like for me?
Yeah.
And I thought, my goodness. And to see that a lot of these people, I mean, some of them were in their 50s, their 60s, and 70s, and however long it has been for them, they had chosen to live all of that life like no longer living because of this one experience. And the common thread between all of them was that none of them knew what the stages of grief were, really being able to understand the framework of the emotions that they were experiencing. And then the second piece to that was they didn't have any tools, which most of us don't have the tools to move forward or to move through the grief when we are experiencing it. And one of the things, I was actually on a live the other day, and one of the things that I had explained is all throughout our lives, we've all experienced loss to some degree.
Yeah.
So regardless of what the situation is, anytime that we experience the loss of or the letting go of something, we are grieving.
Yes.
Okay. And so you got to imagine throughout our lifetime, if I'm going to speak for myself, I mean, I didn't have the tools when I was a 5-year-old child and I lost my favorite toy or blanket. No idea. But I'm going through these emotions. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling the loss. I don't know how to move through it. And so, you got to think that's one experience. Imagine all of the experiences that we've had all throughout our lifetime, not knowing how to deal with it. And then in my case, which was, in 2016, I lost my husband. He passed away suddenly. And, that experience was what really blew the lid off of its top. And then I just realized, oh my goodness, for decades, I have been suppressing and repressing all of these emotions and coming from a place of, I'm going to push through it. I'm going to get through this. And when he passed, it was like, oh, I don't know how to push through this because I'm feeling all of this emotion and I have no idea what to do with it. So, when, shortly afterwards, probably when I finally realized, okay, Kathryne, you've got to get some help. You can't do this on your own like
Yeah.
you've always thought. When I went to the doctor and I started seeing the therapist, one of their first go-tos was, okay, we're going to put you on sleeping pills. We're going to put you on antidepressants. And I thought, oh my goodness, it's almost like my intuition was just ringing fire alarm bells and saying, no, this is not how you're going to do it. There is another way.
Yeah.
And so that's literally how it all started, was how can I then heal myself? What is it that I can learn? What is it that I can do to help me through this grieving process and through my healing journey. And so that's how it all began was, what are some of the things that I can do physically? What were some of the things that I could do mentally, emotionally, and then spiritually? So the last now almost 5 years, John's anniversary of his passing will be on March 3rd. So for the last, 4 or 5 years, it was going through all of these different teachings and modalities. And from each of those, pulling practices that made sense and felt good for me. And, it was, and these are simple things, Michael, like, it wasn't like I went out and I got, did some like dynamic, teaching or whatever. It was like literally learn how to breathe.
Yeah. You weren't climbing Kilimanjaro or, Everest or stuff like that. Yeah.
No. And it's so funny because as I started learning all of these different things and just being consistent in implementing them into my daily practices, over time, I started to see the difference from a holistic view, as opposed to, okay, I'm going to take a medication, pop some Advil, do some sleeping pills, and okay, I'm good for the night. But then now I'm still left with all of this stuff in the morning, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much how it all started. And again, the more that I spoke with people and I started to see, oh my goodness, as I followed my path, I said, okay, like this is what I'm here to do, is really just to teach others, how to guide them through, okay, this is how you can move through your grief. This is how to stop staying stuck or how to get yourself unstuck. This is what you can do when you have those triggers come up. It's one of those things where even over time, even for myself, so sure, yes, it's been 5 years. Yes. Have I gone through all of the stages of grief? Absolutely. Do I oscillate between them at different times? Absolutely. Are the waves of emotions, are they as, do they come as quick and do they come as quickly as they used to? No, they do not. And, but part of that is that in those moments where I do get a trigger, then I know exactly what I need to do. I don't stay in it or whatever's going through, whatever I'm feeling. I don't stay in it as long as I used to, or I'm not even staying in it at all. It's like, okay, that's there. Yep. That's why I got triggered. All right. Acknowledge it, honor it. Okay. Now I'm good.
Yeah. And that's really important, is getting that recognition, because again, you're getting that kind of feedback loop and you're not really if you're not paying attention to it. And that's the thing, we kind of numb ourselves out from, if you're not paying attention to it, you just get into that cycle where it's like you get that trigger and then all of a sudden it goes from a day, goes into 2 days, goes into a week, and a month, and then it just continues on just for one single trigger. Yeah. And it's amazing how that happens. Now, one of the things I want to let everybody know, that we are talking about grief. Now, grief is something that is not just associated with death. And this is why I wanted to bring this up, because a lot of people right now are losing their jobs, have lost their jobs, lost their homes, lost relationships, things like that. So it's everything. So if you have had that, and so many people are, and that's why I wanted you to come on here, because once you start recognizing the patterns of the 5 stages of grief, and I want you to touch on that, because I want people to recognize, the stages of it. And so that this way they can go, okay, now I have a little bit of awareness.
Yes.
And then we can go from there. So if you could just briefly talk about the 5 stages of grief.
For sure.
I think it's really important for people to get that type of information out.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I will say is I've identified more with the 7 stages from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work. Okay. What you'll see is, the 5 stages. So I'll go through what those are. So
you go under the 12 system? Because I know they have a 12 system.
They do too. For me, I found it just a little bit too lengthy. Yeah. But when I looked at I can't remember when it happened, but they expanded it to 7 stages off of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work. So the 7 stages are, and again, it's not linear and it's individual to the person. However, you will experience all of these stages at some point or another. Okay.
Yeah. You know what? I would, I actually, if I can interrupt you on that, instead of going to the 7, can we do 5?
Sure. Yeah,
because
sure. Yeah,
because I just keep
absolutely.
the basic ones, because if
Just
we're going
keep
to
it, sure.
keep it simple, because
We'll keep
I
it
know a lot
simple,
of people,
sure.
because they'll go, what was that 7 one? What was that 6
Okay, yeah,
one?
yeah, no
Yeah.
problem,
If
sure.
I can give them 5, we
For
can give them
sure, we'll
5,
do the
and then we
5.
can touch on the other 2. But I think
Okay,
those
no
5, because I
problem.
know, Kubler-Ross system was the one
Yeah.
that she did and developed. And I think that's the
Yes.
most popular one. So if we
Yes,
kind of
it
just stick
is.
on that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So there is shock and disbelief.
Okay.
There is denial. There is anger. There's bargaining or testing. And then there's acceptance and hope. And so again, each of those stages, you can experience at very different times. So shock and disbelief. So it's, the moment you hear the news, there's that moment of, am I really hearing what I'm hearing? Is this really happening to me? Okay.
God, it
So
sounds like you were listening to my head. Like, dude, I lost a job a couple of years ago, right? So it's like, oh, wait a minute, is she just thinking in my head here? What's going on
yeah,
here? Yeah.
it's really, it's quite fascinating. It's quite fascinating. But anyways,
Yes.
I don't want to digress.
Yeah.
For a
Sorry.
whole other conversation. But anyways, yeah, no, exactly. But we all go through. It's what I was about to say. It's so fascinating that, I mean, you and I, yes, exactly what you said. You had an experience. We've only just met, but yet we have the commonality. Like collectively, we'll have all of these thoughts that come to us that we feel at most times no one else will ever experience or ever even thinks about. We're alone in that, right? However, it's so not true. Anyways, but that's shock and disbelief. And then denial. Denial is that, like, you can't face the fact. You are slowly understanding that, yes, this is what's happening, but not accepting of the fact that this is what's happening in your life right now. So there's denial. And then there's anger. So anger, pretty self-explanatory. It can come in a lot of different ways. You're angry at yourself that maybe there's something that you could have done. You're angry at the other person that maybe, why didn't they take better care of themselves? Why didn't they do all of those things? You're angry at God. Why is he doing this? It's, there's a lot of different ways where that anger will come up, right? Yeah. Bargaining and testing, what that is that you've reached a point where you're pleading with God. You're begging, with God to say, what can I do to change things? What can I do to bring them back? What could I have done differently? So you're almost like, just what could I have done differently? Right. And you're wanting that person back. If I do better with this, bring him back or bring her back, bring them back, whatever it is. So that's bargaining and testing. And then acceptance and hope is now you've accepted what's happened, and you now start to see a future for yourself. Maybe not a full one, but you're starting to see the possibility of a new future, right? Without that person or those people or whatever the case might be now moving forward with you. So anytime, as you said, grief we experience, not only in the death of a loved one, when we've lost our jobs, when we've gone through a separation or divorce, when we've gone through a major move, or a recent breakup. Those are 5 of the major stressors that any human being is going to experience in their lifetime. Yeah. So in any of those stages where you're feeling any of that, that will be a telltale sign of, I'm grieving to some degree. Again, depending on the situation, because it's very different. Now, mind you, yes, I haven't had a lot of people pass away in my life. I have had a few very close relatives, my grandparents, my godfather. But, and so what people will find is that, let's say they lost a parent, and, they found that they were really fine, but then all of a sudden they lost like their favorite uncle or their favorite aunt. Then they have a completely different experience. And then they're trying to figure out, how come I'm feeling so much more for this particular person than I was for the other? Again, depending on the situation. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so depending on the situation, that will dictate. Usually the bond that has been created between you and that other person, depending on how that what that bond was like, will determine then how you or another person will react or respond to the loss. Okay. So that's also one of the things to just to be aware of as well. Well, how come I wasn't so sad when my grandmother passed away, but how come I'm so sad now that my grandfather passed away, right? And usually that's tied to the type of bond that was shared between the two of you.
Yeah, that's really interesting how that happens. Now, with the stages of grief, like we said, it doesn't have to happen in like a chronological order. Like sometimes you can go straight into anger. I know that was for me. It was like, started with denial, and then it's like, boom, I was in full anger, and then it was like depression, just like done. So I kind of missed like, those are kind of the steps. And then hoping that was kind of like an acceptance. That was a lot longer, but it was so interesting, like, because my own personal loss, and it's interesting, I'll tell you a little about my story too. Like, I did lose my father at a very young age. So that was the first traumatic loss on that. The second loss was the loss of my innocence through a little bit of abuse. So didn't know how to handle all that sort of things.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, later on in life, my mother remarried, and she married a funeral director. So,
okay.
Yeah. So my life was just surrounded by grief and loss, and on a big level. And it was interesting. I never really thought about that whole situation, living in a funeral home and all that sort of thing. And people think, oh, that's funny. But the level of loss that you see on a daily basis, I didn't think it affected me. But years later, when things started happening more and more, I really realized that type of, I wouldn't say trauma, but just being witness to it all the time and being involved in it all the time was pretty detrimental for my own psyche at the same time. But and then the last year, like I was, it was 2 years now, I could say, I had a loss at the job, and then I lost my stepbrother. He actually took his own life. So there was like that thing. So, it was so interesting because I could find myself, kind of like all the emotions were muddled. Like some days I was angry, but then I was just so super depressed. Like I just couldn't figure this out. And then that whole denial, and then the bargaining, like it was just like, it was like hour to hour, minute to minute sometimes. And I got so confused, but I knew I was in grief, and I just had to process. And it's like, okay, what the fuck am I going to do? And
I know, I love that you brought that up, because again, with the stages, like I said, it's not linear. You're going to experience them at different times. Sometimes you're going to experience them all at once. And sometimes you're just going to be so numb, like, I don't even know what I'm feeling right now. Like it's wild. One of the things that I've shared with people is that, and especially when we're in those types of states, and, I don't want to go into like, oh, men are more this and women are more like this. It doesn't matter. I really, want not to stay away from that. As a human being, this is what we experience. And when we don't know or have a tool of how to express or ask for help, then that's when, the thoughts, we ruminate, we stay stuck, we fall into a depression. Myself too, I fell into a depression after John passed. And that was because I had no idea what to do with myself, really and truly. And even I remember, I think it was on the second or third time that I had gone to see the therapist, and, sure, great hours spent crying, expressing, sharing all the things. But then now I'm going home, and I'm like, and then now what do I do now? Like, I can't talk to her. So what is it that I do for myself, right? What are those things that I can do? And because I was so I'm going to figure this out, I just started diving into a lot of things. But yes, unless you have tools or know, okay, what is it that I can do to express, or how do I communicate or ask for help? Most people will just try to go it alone or do it on their own. Yes, some people will go out and read books, but to be quite honest with you, for myself, what I found is, yes, there are a lot of books that explain, that give the framework of grief and what you can experience, but there aren't a lot of books that say, okay, this is what you can do. I remember I was reading through a bunch of different things. So where they had tips. Okay. So one was allow yourself time to grieve. Okay.
Yeah.
But what does that look like? What does that sound like?
Yeah.
What does
What's the
that
time
feel
frame?
like?
What's the time frame
What's
on
it
that?
like? Yeah, exactly. But what is that? Like, okay, great. Allow myself time to grieve. All right. All right. I don't know what to do there. But that again, so there weren't specific actions to say, hey, you know what? This is what you can do. If you're feeling like this, you know what? Journal, write a letter, whatever the case might be. But and so that then was where a lot of my work came in, was to research, okay, what are some of those different tools that are easy to implement, that people don't have to go pay tens of thousands of dollars to, but really and truly, what is it? And
So hold on for a second. You said you don't have to pay tens of thousands of
no, you
dollars from these are
don't. You
simple things that you
don't.
can do. You can find.
100%.
Okay, just
100%.
just double checking. I want to make sure my
Yeah.
earphones are working there.
Yeah. No, it's so, and and that's the thing. Like it's so crazy because when the more I was researching and talking to people, and I just said, okay, I'm going to put some things together. And this
All
is
right.
what I'm going to start now sharing and teaching other people how to do. So
That's awesome. All right. So that being
yes,
said, okay, we've
yes,
got to the stages of grief. We've all
yes,
gone through it. So
yes,
practicality here. Some of those tidbits, some practical ideas to get
yes,
through it. Now, are your tips based on the feeling that you're feeling? So if I'm angry, this is what I do. If I'm in denial,
yes.
this is what you do. If I'm in depression, this is what I do. Do you have like certain steps or certain actions that they can take for those particular steps or stages of grief?
Okay, so not in that sense. It's
Okay.
more of, okay, you're grieving, period.
All right.
Right? Regardless of what stage that you're in, you're grieving. What it is that when the person realizes, and it's usually after about the first year. So once they've gone past that first year, because the first year is always the toughest, right? We're
Yeah.
still trying to figure out our emotions. We're dealing with all of the firsts. Okay. First birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, they're not there. It's the toughest, if it's the
Yeah.
toughest year. The moment that person is in a place of, okay, I realize I've been stuck in this train of thought of, I don't know how to move forward. I don't know if I can love again. I don't know how I can love again, whatever that is for that person. Once they're in that moment, they realize, oh my goodness, this has got to stop. I got to change. This has got to change. I need help. Then that is the perfect time to begin implementing it. Why? Because now the person is more open and receptive to broadening the perspective and their mindset around whether or not they can actually move through their grief or not.
That
Okay.
makes total sense. Yeah.
Someone who is still deep in the throes of the sadness and the despair, they have to move through that, however it is. Okay. There are a few practices that they can do for that 100%. My biggest thing that I will say, especially in the first year, is to ask for help.
Yeah.
Who are going to be those 3 to 5 people? Because most people won't ask for it.
No.
Hands down. Okay. 3 to 5 people. So whether it's going to see a counselor, whether it's going to see a therapist, going to, I think they have bereavement groups, whatever that is, and go to those different programs, have that support, but also enlist 3 to 5 people with, it could be your family or your friends, but these also have to be people who have the ability to hold space for you. And what I mean by that is it's not the
Please explain.
person, it's not the person who, let's say, for example, I come to you, Michael, and I'm like, oh my goodness, Michael, I'm having a really crap day. And you're like, okay, yeah, you know what? And you just want to fix it. You want to give the solution right away. Okay. Because actually what's happening is you're more uncomfortable because you see how distraught I am. And you're just like, oh my goodness, I just want her to feel better. Okay.
Yeah.
No, not that. Okay. That is not what you want. What you want is someone who's going to be able to say, hey, you know what, Kathryne or Michael, do you want me to just listen? or are you actually looking for advice right now?
That's just so powerful. Just that there, like, wow. If you can get somebody just to say, hey, can I just listen? Because so many times I've had so many friends, it's like, they just want to fix you. They don't actually listen.
Exactly.
They just want to fix you. And it's like, wait a minute. Like, I just want to spill my guts for a minute. I don't want to pay $100 an hour, but I just want to spill my guts, and it's so important. I really appreciate that. Okay, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So that is the most important thing. Those are the people that you want to have around you. Enlist someone who's going to say, hey, you know what, Michael? Okay, I get where you're at. You don't have to talk today, but what do you need? Do you need me to do some cleaning? Do you need me to go out and get some groceries? Whatever that is, because when you're in the throes of the grief, you can't think. Like, you really can't, because you're just trying to manage between all the different emotions and thoughts you're having already. So a lot of the times, to even know how to ask or what to ask for, that in itself is already like a huge, oh my goodness, I don't even know what to ask. So to have someone to be able to say, okay, look, let's say you're one of my friends. Okay. And I'm like, okay, look, Michael, this is what I'm going through. There are going to be times where I may not even know what to ask, but I need you to just check in with me. And when you check in, can you just ask me these questions, and I'll let you know. It'll just make it so much easier. Now, what you're doing is you're creating a structure for communication, right? And so what happens is, for myself, what I did was I had 5 people. 3 of them were very close friends, and then 2 were also friends and coaches. Okay. So, and that's what they did. So we set a structure in terms of each week they would check in on me. We would also then evaluate after like X amount of time. Does it need to be every week? Does it maybe now every 2 weeks, or maybe now it's just once a month? But we set a structure for communication, and I cannot tell you how much that made a difference for me to just be able to just be, really. Yeah. Because man, when I had those days of just like crying the entire day, this face, like, no, not having it. The hair, forget it. Yeah. Getting up to go and brush my teeth, oh my God, not happening, right? So that is what I will say is, right away, you just need to figure out who are the people that you really trust and know that are just going to hold that space for you for however long, and they're just going to be there 100%.
Yeah,
that's what I will say.
So that's so important, is to have that. And I think it's something that we don't learn, and to ask for help. It's just something that we have to kind of figure out like our own, like you said. But now we have the information out there. So for those who are listening, is to get that support system. I think that's really important. We got to have that support system out there, and to get those friends I like the idea of having a list, because it also keeps them, like, it keeps that communication, but it's a very specific communication. Because when you're in the thralls of emotion, stuff like that, having a complex conversation about different things, you just can't absorb it. It's like, do you need groceries? Have you eaten today? Have you showered today? Have you got outside? Have you gone in for a walk? Have you got outside? You got to get that fresh air. Those are some of those simple things, like get out of bed, put some clothes on, have a shower, small little things that you don't think about, but days go by, you're sitting on that couch and you're just in that wallows, and it's like, okay, how much are you drinking? Are you self-medicating? What else is going on? So it's always important to check on that too as well. So what other kind of information do you have? I know one of the things about self-medication is really something that people don't talk about too, as far as getting into alcohol, drugs, and stuff like that. And it's interesting how the doctors right away just want to put you on medication, right, to numb you out.
I know.
And over the years in my Reiki practice, years ago, I had so many people, when they came in to see me, I looked at the medication that we're in, and 90% of them were on antidepressants.
Wow.
And it's a lot of times because they came from a loss, they had a lot of antidepressants. And then for those who have been on antidepressants or taking antidepressants, it's so difficult for them to come off, because once you're on them, it's a crazy 100%. Thing too as well.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know for myself, I mean, yes, I've taken some medications in the past, but I think the maybe it was like Advil, like that's what I was taking. But even then, one of the things that I started to see was, okay, we're taking all these medications, even with antibiotics. And this is what happens to our bodies and if we're not actually taking care of our bodies, then what's happening then to our immune system? You know, so when we're looking at it from a physiological point of view, from a neurological point of view, I'm like, holy crap, we actually don't need a lot of the stuff that we're being prescribed. So that being said, when I had that experience with my doctor and my therapist, and then I started studying Ayurveda, the Hindu chakra system, you know, looking at physical exercise, looking at nutrition. I mean, I was usually pretty good with that anyways, but then as I started to learn about the other modalities and these ancient teachings, I said, okay, you know what, let's take this a step further. Then there was the breath work, tapping, meditation, yoga. I mean, there were so many things that I started to study. And so for me, what it was, the first thing that I said to myself was, okay, what is one thing that I haven't been doing? Okay, that can be easy for me to do right now that I haven't been doing recently. Oh, okay. My physical activity. Well, since John passed, I haven't been doing anything. So let's start there first. So then that looked like me going out for a walk, going out for a hike. Then that, you know, then that lengthened into, okay, now I'm taking 2-hour, 3-hour hikes and I'm spending time in nature. I'm now starting to take dance classes. I'm taking a boot camp. So that's where I started first. Okay. So my suggestion to anyone is just look at where you're at. What is the most, where you're at? What is the most easiest thing for you to implement or do? And it could be something you're already doing. It's just now, how do we take that and then tweak it and refine it and ensure that that practice is something that's being consistently done every single day or every single week. So for me, it was the physical activity. Then I started looking at my nutrition. So that's where the Ayurveda came in, understanding the doshas, understanding the energy centers in terms of, okay, the foods, how they are affecting me when I'm eating them, also paying attention to the seasons. And, you know, as the seasons change, your doshas will also, the balance of them will change. So then you tweak your what you're eating, you know, your water intake. So the reason why I started looking at all of these different things was understanding how intelligent our vessels are. Okay. Our bodies are such, like, they're incredible machines for what they can naturally do on their own. Right. So when I was looking at the physical fitness and nutrition, when I was looking at those aspects, is because I already knew, well, when you do physical activity, what happens to your body? Your body naturally produces, you know, the feel-good hormones, endorphins, oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine. So in my mind, it was like, well, why don't I just now train my body to produce more of those things? Right?
Exactly.
So,
makes sense.
Right. So, and that's how a lot of what I started diving into, that was kind of the premise for it. Right. Okay. So if this happens, how does the body react? What does the body do when this happens? So that took care of the physical fitness. Then I started looking at the mental, emotional, and that's where the breath work, meditation, tapping, and all of those other things started to come in. So I'm sitting here thinking like, oh goodness, I didn't realize that, you know, if we could manipulate our breath, this is what happens to our bodies. Holy crap. Who would have thought? And the thing that kills me is that it's like, you know, here's this ancient practice and something that we do naturally every day. But who would have thought that if we actually understood, if we all understood how we can manipulate our breath to produce these things in our bodies, like every day,
it's simple.
Holy
it's
crap.
the simplest stuff. Like,
Exactly.
it never ceases to amaze me. And this is one of the things I love about this podcast is I get to meet so many people and learn so much stuff I kind of knew, but then they reinforce it. And then it's like, that makes sense. And it's like, you know, you talk about breath work and then like, even like chanting and then how they affect the energy centers and each vibration, stuff like that. And then just the breath itself and holding that, moving that up into the higher centers in the brain. And it just changes that electrical system. And like you said, the chemical aspect of it too. simple stuff. And it's something that's been around for years. Like monks have been doing it, like Buddhist monks have been doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, that's why you see them. If you ever notice, and because it's interesting, before we came to air, we had a conversation, and one of the gentlemen that was on my podcast, Bante, is it
Yes.
Bante? Yeah.
Bonte. I think, some people say, I call him Bonte.
Yeah. Bonte. Yeah. Yo, B, what's up? Yeah. What's up, B?
He's the coolest monk ever.
Yeah, he is. And one of the things I loved about him is like, they're always so happy. They always got that smile on their face. And it was like, what's the deal? And it's just like the simplest things, like he was explaining, it's the simplest things. And I think those are some of the things that we have to kind of look back at and understand, like just breathing, being present. And that will help a lot, which is kind of being mindfulness, is just kind of that whole mindfulness. Like, okay, I'm feeling like shit. All right, let me just kind of go in, let me get centered again. And just those small little things. And like you said, breathe, because we get into that shallow breath. And again, it's energy, right? And you want to move that energy throughout the body, the kind of simplest way of doing it. But it's just those small things. That being said, what other tips did you got there? What other kind of golden nuggets? Because I really love we got to get some exercise. That makes sense.
Yes, 100%. Yes,
we got to get a support system. So get support. Yes, what else you got? What other nuggets you got?
So other two that I also share every single time. So meditation and journaling. And I know for a lot of people, there are some people that are like, oh, journaling, writing this and this and that. Well, okay, what is some form of expression that you can do? So whether that's art, painting, drawing, sketching, or maybe it's dance or it's music. Most people I've seen, writing, art, but there are some in terms of they need that movement within their body. So dance and music. So what is that form of expression that, again, it's something that you love doing, you stop doing, or you've always been interested in doing it. You've always felt called to, but for whatever reason, you just never did it. So whatever that is, do that. For me, it was journaling. The journaling, what that allowed me to do was, because I would also use that to write to John as well, that was my space or moment to express all of the things and things that maybe necessarily I wasn't comfortable sharing with another person, even with my therapist. Okay. And so that's what it allowed me to do. And if you think about it, you probably have heard, all the successful people, they've got their morning routines. Journaling is one of the things that they do, hands down. And I will attest to that, because what happens is, throughout the nighttime, our body will actually, the cortisol will build up, because we don't realize that throughout the day, all of the information that we actually absorb, whether we know it or not, consciously or subconsciously. Okay. So then what happens when we go to sleep is, if we haven't released that cortisol builds up. So now in the morning, how sometimes when you get up in the morning and then all of a sudden, like, you just notice, you're like, crap, I don't feel like I got a really good rest. My mind is already like jumping to all these different places. When you journal, that mind dump of whatever is going on helps to clear that space.
Wow.
So that, and the journaling, a lot of people think, and this is again where people think, oh, I gotta write, it's gotta be perfect, like all this kind of, man, there were some times I was journaling and I would literally write, I know I got to write because this is how I'm feeling. I really have no idea what to write right now. I'm actually feeling really pissed off that I'm doing this. Oh my goodness, I have 20 more minutes. And that, that's how it would sometimes start. But that's what needed to come out. And then all of a sudden the sentences just start forming, and it's like, oh, that's what's really there. But the moment I can get that stuff out, released, it's like, okay, you've now cleared the space to put magic in its place. So now you get to choose. And that's where the meditation comes in.
All right. So do you recommend, sorry, I just want to interrupt you. Do you recommend journaling at the beginning of the day, or as soon as you wake up, or after, like before you go to bed? Like, what's the best time to kind of?
Both times are really good. I prefer to do it in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to get it all out in the morning. And part of the reason why is because I have a pretty strict morning routine, and I will not, like, I just won't, because on the days where I'm missing, where I don't journal, I start to feel it. All of a sudden, I'm a little bit more snippy. I'm a little bit more, curt with my words. And then I'm like, oh, hold on a second. I didn't journal. I didn't do my workout this morning. So, okay.
So if I meet you on the
days.
street and it's like, you know, oh, hey, Mike, I'll just say, listen, did you journal today? You didn't do your journaling, didn't you?
Exactly. That would be an appropriate question to ask. And I would probably say, you know what, Michael, damn it, you're right. Yeah. I didn't. But yeah. So yeah, I do suggest that, yeah, morning is a really great time. As I said, because of the fact that, you know, whatever happens overnight, that's a great way to do it, because then you set yourself up more powerfully for the day. Okay.
I like that.
However, there are some people who will say, I'm not a morning person. No problem. Then do it at night. But you want to do it at least 1 to 2 hours before you go to sleep. Again, just to clear your mind. There are some days where, yes, I have my morning routine, but depending on whatever's going on, sometimes I'll journal 2 to 3 times throughout the day. So it's just a way for me to get it out. You know,
that's another way of expressing it. I like that, because, you know, it is energy. It's a form of energy that needs to get out of the body. And sometimes it's hard to articulate it physically, but the psyche, you know, is still there. And it's like, it wants to process that mental energy. And what a great way of doing that is to just journal it out, like journal your thoughts out. And the great thing about it doesn't cost you anything. You can get a pen and a little bit of booklet like this, like a little book like this. I'm taking notes as you're noticing. So I wasn't ignoring you. I'm taking notes as we're doing this. You know, people go, what are you doing? I said, I'm taking notes at the same time, because I'm getting my education at the same time.
Yeah, there you go.
So the next thing is meditation. I'm a big fan of meditation. You know, there are days, though, I have to admit, I struggle with meditation, and it's like, I don't want to do any more meditation. This sucks. I got to get up and get going. But when I sit down and I focus and I get in there and I plant my ass down that chair and I go into it, like you said, I'm a happier guy. I'm a little more zen. My heart starts opening up. And I highly recommend meditation. If it's the one thing, and I always hear, I can't meditate. Well, you couldn't drive a car either, but you learned how to do that too.
That's right.
You just got to put the time in, and then your body, your mind, your whole life will just change. Like it's just one of those small little things. I'm a big fan of meditation.
I agree. You know, it wasn't until, so what happened was, remember I shared John passed in 2016, and here I am figuring all this stuff out. And it wasn't until 2018 when I realized, you know, as much as I had been learning all of these other great things, what I also then started to see was, oh, I have a lot of not so good coping mechanisms. So that being said, what happened was, okay, so he passed in 2016. And I started involving myself in a lot of different things. The community of people really started to change around me. You know, as I had mentioned, was, you know, who are those people that I could reach out to? But then it was now expanding that, expanding it, because I started to take other seminars, go into different workshops, was learning all these different things. And so, yes, I started meeting all those different people. At the time, I was also working as a district manager for Eastern Canada. So you have to imagine I had 18 stores in all of Ontario and in the Maritimes. So I did a lot of traveling. I flew a lot, I drove a lot, and at least 2 or 3 times every single week. So if you can imagine, that's my work schedule. I'm involved in all of these other things because I'm really wanting to understand how the heck, you know, to move through this grief. And then I'm going out. I started dating again. And then one day I was on a trip home from one of my stores in London. And I remember I was driving and I was like, holy crap, man, I am freaking tired, like exhausted.
Yeah.
And so, you know, here I'm having a conversation myself in the car. And I'm like, okay, Kathryne, why are you so exhausted? And as I started to see all of these, all of that I had just explained, I'm like, why am I even doing that? Like, why am I doing that to myself? I'm like, oh, it's because this way, by the time I get home, I'm going to be so exhausted. I don't have time to think. I won't have time to feel. I can just hit the sack.
Yeah.
And so when I started seeing that, I just said to myself, okay, you know what, Kathryne, you're still not even allowing yourself to fully grieve.
Yeah. You're just
stop.
using all those other things to keep you occupied and keep you
100%.
busy. That's your coping mechanism.
That was my coping mechanism. And, you know, I said, okay, that's it. So I took that entire year off and I spent it all in solitude. And, you know, had conversations with people. That was a whole other experience. So, and another conversation for another day. But I really saw the importance of, oh my goodness, I have to learn to just be with myself.
Yeah.
You know, and I saw
it sounds simpler than it is.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. And, you know, I just said, okay, because then I started to look at, okay, John passed, I started dating, doing all this stuff, you know, and John and I were together for 16 years. We'd known each other much longer than that. So we'd had such a long history. We had a very, you know, we had that bond. And I had seen him like, okay. And I was also divorced and, you know, pregnant, married, and divorced by the time I was 25. So, you know, like that was another aspect of my life, right? And I said, okay, I'd always been in a relationship. I need to spend time by myself. I'm always with friends and doing this, and I just really need to learn how to be with myself. And so one of my mentors, who also became my spiritual teacher, we would see each other every single Sunday. And, you know, for those moments, for that entire year, you know, I am so thankful for having that time, because what I learned about myself was like, oh my God, like facing so many things that a lot of us don't want to look at, being able to see those, oh my goodness, I just realized that, you know, and you said present, that word present, and I have not been present throughout my entire lifetime, where I thought I was, but I actually wasn't. And to really see that and say, holy crap, man, oh my God, I can't even imagine the feeling that I've left certain people in by being that way. Wow. Okay, so now I have a choice. I can either choose to continue that or not, right? And obviously that's not the path that I wanted to continue. But then that being said, was where I understood, because one of the things I realized, one of the lessons I learned from John's passing was, you know, and what we all forget is that our time is limited on this physical plane. We are also physical beings. Death, our passing, our transition is inevitable. It is an inevitable fact of life that we are all going to face. So if we know that, we remember that, God damn it, I'm going to live my life now, and only now, not freaking being, you know, oh my goodness, you know, years ago I did this to a person and feeling shitty about that. Oh my goodness, I don't know about my future, because that's what many of us do. We're either living in the past or we're living in the future, and we forget to actually how to be present in the moment now. Yeah. And so meditation, right? And so with meditation, the more I became aware of that, the more I said, okay, this is why a lot of people feel that sadness and that grief when someone passes, because they realize, shit, crap, I wanted to go out, you know, I wanted to go visit them, but I just never had the time. I wanted to go and do this with them, but I just never had the time. I really wanted to say this, but I just never had the time. We have the time. We just never took it.
We just never choose it. I think that's
and part with society.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things with COVID right now. Yes. And it's really forcing people to really rethink and reshape their whole lives and what's important. Yes. The things that because we're always in this kind of this rat race, this North American rat race, where it's just work. And, you know, it's just, you know, I got to get the car, got to get the house, got to do this. And it's just, I got to get kids school, and it's just work. And they don't realize when that stops, like, you know, all the small little important things are just amplified that even much more. Because now, you know, let's say you did lose a loved one, and it's like you weren't able to go see them. And it's because I was just too busy. Like I had too much stuff on the go, and we really missed that a lot. Yeah. And it's really important. You get all those little different things that you do. So you're also a coach too, as well. You do so many other things. Just touch briefly on this collective soul evolution that you're involved with. Just briefly, because we're almost out of time, my dear.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. So no problem. So yes, so Collective Soul Evolution. So yes, I launched that. I launched Collective Soul Evolution at the end of September last year, and really the mission of Collective Soul Evolution is to help others self-heal and transform their lives. And, you know, how to teach them the tools through body, mind, spirit, and creative expression. When you combine practices within each of those four pillars, which are the four pillars, of Collective Soul Evolution, when you implement those practices, you then begin to transform your life in ways that you had never thought possible, and actually begin living a fulfilled life in every area of your life. So, you know, the last month or so, let's say in January, was really looking at, okay, so now I've birthed this, right?
Nice.
I see it as, you know, this is my baby that I birthed. And so what happens? You nurture and you nourish it. And so now we are in a place where, you know, looking at what are some of those different programs, what are some of the other collaborations to bring these tools to be able to teach others. Right now, we're actually in a creative writing workshop, which has been so freaking amazing.
Nice.
And, you know, it's been so wonderful to see people. You know, one of the great things is that a lot of the people that I've been able to help, you know, the age range are those from like early 20s to 70s. And to see some of the things that have come through where, you know, they thought they had dealt with, you know, a situation that happened in the past, whether it was the death of a loved one, you know, separation, divorce, to see them now see through even this writing workshop, because we give triggers, they're writing triggers and prompts. And, you know, to see not only how they look, you know, physically, like their reactions, but what comes through on paper has just been so profound.
Nice.
And to see how each of them have blossomed, like it's just absolutely wonderful. And for me, you know, I speak about those four pillars because, you know, not only from my own experience, but then also to see a lot of the people that I've already been able to work with, what's now happening in their lives because of what they've started to implement, and how they've been able to now really open up their heart and see like, holy smokes, I can actually love again. And it's not about finding somebody else or finding, oh, I've got to go here or I've got to move here. It was teaching all of them, how do you love yourself first? How do you fill up that void that you have in your heart, right?
Yeah.
How do you fill that back up again? How do you repair it? And, you know, it's so, like I said, it's so wonderful to see. So I'm so excited for what's going to be happening.
Oh, that's amazing. It really shows. It really shows. It really shows your passion and the work you've done. And I'm really happy that you're doing this type of work. It's so important. And you're so full of energy. You got a beautiful energy about you. And it's so nice to see. Very, very refreshing. That being said, Kathryne, if people were trying to find you on the World Wide Web and any place else, where can they find you? So give us your information, please.
Yes, absolutely. So the easiest ways to find me are either on Facebook, and you just Kathryne Muller, and Kathryne is spelled Kathryne, and then Muller's Muller, and it'll be the same thing for Instagram, but it's Kathryne_Muller. You can also join the Facebook group, which is Collective Soul Evolution. You can also find Collective Soul Evolution on Instagram as well. So those would be the two best places.
And I'll have all that information in the descriptions for both the video and the audio too as well. So Kathryne, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It happened. It went by so quickly.
I know.
Yeah. So that being said, Kathryne, I'm just going to close off the show here. So this has been the Metaphysical Mentor Podcast with Michael Philpott. Thanks so much for joining me, and goodbye for now.
Bye.